Hello again, family, and welcome to episode 2 of Prospect Q&A. I have to tell you that I love this. This is so much fun. We have another round of great questions. First and foremost, we're creating a fun little culture here, aren't we? I look at this list and I see a lot of people asking questions for the second time in two prospect Q&As. You guys are getting involved on Twitter. Every night I'm having another great conversation with a really interesting and smart group of Cardinal fans. And the last 2 weeks since the launch of Birds on the Black have been some of the most exciting 2 weeks I've had on Twitter. You guys are incredible. I mean that. Incredible. And let's keep this going. For real. I can't say enough how awesome this has been. We'll start with our first question. It comes from Luke Flusche? Luke, I apologize for butchering your name. Yeah, you're a fine modern gentleman as well. For the audience, I missed Luke's question last week. This was supposed to be answered last week, and I just blew right on by it. You'll find week after week that I am dumber than you are. Not only am I dumber than you, but I'm dumber than everyone. So I'm going to miss questions. I'm going to mispronounce stuff. I apologize. Luke's question was, the biggest surprise from the 2017 draft class. He wants the good and the bad. The good for me, first off, by the way, questions again, no answers. I try my hardest. I don't want to cheat. I'm trying not to cheat. I wish I would have done it for a question coming up. We'll get to that. The good. Their hands were tied. Those first couple draft picks for signing Dexter Fowler and the hacking scandal with the Astros were gone. First pick was 94th overall. It was Scott Hurst, who had a good year. But, looking back on the draft picks earlier in the week, what really surprises me that ended up being good is in the later rounds, they drafted some interesting pitchers. You had Andrew Somerville, you had Brett Seaberger, Evan Kurchinski. Evan's interesting to me. Evan's an East Carolina guy who started the year after being drafted in Peoria, which is a full season club. The only guy from the 2016 draft, and in 2016 they took Dakota Hudson, Zach Gallen, Connor Jones, and they also took John Kilichowski, who was a Vanderbilt pitcher. He was the only one of those guys, although Dakota Hudson pitched out of the pen in Springfield. Kilichowski was the only guy from 2016 drafted who made it to a full season club and pitched as a starter. Kurchowski did the same thing, and their numbers are almost identical. It is incredible. Now, Kilichowski had a rough 2017. He started in Peoria and wasn't very effective, and then he got hurt. I believe he had surgery. I will look it up. We'll double check. It was an arm issue. But that's a really interesting name. Will Latcham, Evan Galori, Cody Whitley. Those are all names that were drafted in the 2017 draft in the later rounds, and they were all effective. Now, most of those guys have pitched as starters in their collegiate career, and they pitched exclusively out of the bullpen mostly during the 2017 season, except for Andrew Somerville. We'll get to him in a second. But anyways, they had a lot of success with guys pitching out of the bullpen and doing it effectively after being drafted. That's something, there's easy things to look for to be excited about or that went well, but that's something that I'm really interested to track. That Cody Whitley, again, I apologize, he's going to be interesting to watch. He had Tommy John. He was drafted late, had Tommy John before he was drafted, came back and pitched great. There's a kid named Jake Walsh who, man, he's an exclusive relief pitcher, and I could really see him moving through the organization quick. Keep an eye on Jake Walsh. And Andrew Somerville is a really interesting starting pitcher. He's probably the best of all the starting pitchers from the 27 draft, at least from a projectability and a potential to contribute to the major league level from a starting standpoint down the line. But, there's 5 or 6 names that were drafted in 2017 that pitched really well. And that was something that was really good. The bad, I'm gonna cop out here a little bit with the bad. There really isn't a whole lot of bad. Zach Jackson and Terry Fuller, who, a lot of you guys have asked about. We'll get to that in a second. Neither of them played particularly well, but that's to be expected for 18-year-old kids, even starting in the Gulf Coast level. That's a huge ask. That's a culture shock. It's a challenge shock. You're going against high velocity, low control pitchers. Something you haven't even seen even against some of the top, the top players in the high school level. That's not necessarily great, but it's not bad exactly. I guess the first thing that comes to mind, what's bad is, I really, 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 really would have liked for there to be like one of the pitchers. I said it's all good, but I would have liked to have had one of them just blow the cover off the ball. And when I say by blow the cover off the ball, I just really would have liked for one of them to have like stood out from the rest of the pack. That as I'm doing the tier system for the starting pitchers and in the organization, I could have said, oh, this guy's already tier 2, or this guy's already tier 3. And it's important for the organization to have that because they have kind of a hole of depth after Jordan Hicks, and he'll be at Palm Beach or Springfield this year, and then it's kind of a little hole there. Some of the international guys, again, we'll get to that here in a little bit, they could be interesting, but that's the one bad thing is none of those guys were really amazing, although I would expect Andrew Somerville to be near Peoria, if not starting in Peoria, and he's the guy you're going to want to keep an eye on. Again, Luke, thank you for your patience on that. My next question, real fast. Again, I mentioned having building like a really fun little community here. The next couple people that I'm going to go over the questions, they're some of my favorite people on earth, some of my favorite people on Twitter. Follow them. They're the highest quality people. I can't say that enough. Grant DUBB, my boy, he asked, is Alcantara more Carlos Martinez 2.0 or Rosie 2.0? Now, this is an onion, and this is a bunch of layers of the onion that you peel. Real fast, I don't know why all of my lights seem like they're on fire. Let's turn that off. God, I can't figure this out. Yeah, so I guess the easy answer to that is neither. And it's such a poor answer, but, those are huge asks. You're asking, is Sandy Alcantara going to be a top-of-the-line starting pitcher, or is he going to be a top-of-the-line closer? I'll say, first off, he has the chance to do both. Aren't a lot of guys in the league who can say that. Aren't a lot of guys in the minor leagues who can say it. Cardinals have a couple guys who can do it, which is really interesting. But that's a huge ask. If you're asking me if I think he can be a top-of-the-line closer, I think with a little bit of command, he could definitely be it. I think he's more likely to be Rosie 2.0 than he is Carlos Martinez 2.0. I can't imagine him ever being to the point where you think, oh, you know what, this guy's going to go out and we're going to feel pretty good about him pitching better than a quality start. He just doesn't have the command for it yet. Once his command gets better, then we're talking about something different. But his command isn't there yet, and it's not really exactly showing signs of getting better either. He's still young. He'll be in Memphis next year, unless he's in the bullpen. And let's hope he's not in the bullpen. Let's hope he gets to be in Memphis. Let's hope he gets to start in Memphis. Let him develop a little bit, and then if they need relief help later on, they can go to him. But especially now that he's not going to be traded for Giancarlo Stanton. That's my answer. In my mind, it's kind of a weird comparison, but he's got Braden Looper type quality. Like, he reminds me of Braden Looper. So that's the kind of player I think he could be. And that's a big victory. I can't say that enough. DUBB, keep up the questions, man. This has been great. So my next two questions are from easily the two most sincere and awesome guys on Twitter, not named Cardinals Gifts. First is the Farmer Vala, who is amazing. Follow him. He's smart. He's great. He's witty. I love communicating with him. And that is, he asked Victor Garcia and Sam Tewes, spelled Tewes, it's like Davis with a T, given their 2017, where do they sit in the organization? Now, two completely different guys. Victor Garcia is an international signee who spent his second season in the Dominican Summer League after signing. He took a step back offensively. He's a big power bat. I guess if I had to answer that question, how has his stock changed? Well, truth be told, his stock has fallen since they signed him as an international free agent. It's not uncommon for those guys to spend a couple seasons in the Dominican Summer League. The problem is he didn't exactly get better in his second year. He showed signs and he got better as the season went on, which is positive. He'll be in the Gulf Coast League this year. We'll have a better feel for that. But, this is an organization full of outfielders at every level. And, he's kind of drowning out a little bit. Still so young. He still can make a name for himself. And it's just that right now it isn't quite there. And then the other person was Sam Tewes. And the deal with Sam is that he was, I believe, an 8th round pick. And when the Cardinals drafted him in 2016, he was coming off of elbow surgery. And, whatever. But he was great in 2017. He, the numbers are kind of misleading. He had some control issues. But I would say that the 2017 for Sam Tewes really, really helped boost his stock. As a matter of fact, right now I'm working on an article where I tier the starting pitchers. And a year ago, I probably would have put Sam Tewes, he would have been at the end as kind of like a mention. And this year, I thought about him and putting his state college rotation mate, Daniel Castano, in like the 3rd tier, at the bottom end of the 3rd tier, which is incredible. And they have that potential to be there. But, with Tewes, because he's a big body monster, so much like Lance Lynn, but with a little bit of heat and a little bit, at that point in their development, better off-speed pitches. That's kind of what he's capable of being. I like Sam Tewes a lot. I would imagine that both he and his battery mate will be He and his rotation mate will both be in Peoria. But I think Sam Tewes did wonders for his stock, and I would imagine that if a team were to trade, that Sam Tewes would have trade value, and that's rare for that kind of thing. For me, I grade him higher out than I grade Connor Jones. I'm not a huge Connor Jones fan, as most of you guys know. Yeah, I hope that answers. It's kind of a convoluted way of saying it. My next question, and we mentioned it last week, came from another one of my favorite people, Troy Poole. I'm cycling through my Twitter notifications because I want to nail Troy's question because it's important, because his son Zach is awesome. Zach says pitching is thin at the lower levels, so his buddy Enochs Nevada, who is an awesome left-handed pitcher, will pitch in Springfield at some point next year. I told him with a really good start, there's no need to rush him. Thoughts? First off, Zach, hi man. By the way, your dad's one of the coolest people on earth. Respect him. He's awesome. I respect him. Ian's interesting. Ian is a lefty who has extreme splits. He's really, really good against lefties and not so good against righties so far, but he's young. He held his own in Peoria. He wasn't great, just like Jake Woodford. Jake Woodford was a little bit better in Peoria in 2016 when he was there than Oxnevad was in 2017. But one thing Oxnevad does better than any other pitcher in the organization is pick off runners at first base. He is probably in the top 5 or 10 in all of the minor leagues at doing that. He's got a really, really great changeup. He's a control-first guy. In my opinion, Zach, and he could always be better than this, is he is an ideal loogie, which gets him to the major leagues eventually. But, your dad's on this. Just like Troy said, maybe start him at Palm Beach. Let him get confident in that ridiculous environment. And, that'll help his stats a little bit. And then by the end of the year, get him in Springfield and see what happens. Cardinals have a lot of pitching. It wouldn't hurt him at all to be in Palm Beach. And also, the thing about Palm Beach is it's in Florida. And the good thing about that is that's where the home base is. That's where the instructors are. He'd be able to work on anything he wanted to with any of the instructors that the Cardinals provide. And I think that's best for him. So personally, without looking at it like intensely, I want him to start at Palm Beach. And if all goes well, he'll be in Springfield. Again, guys, thank you so much. My former colleague, and you know what? I still consider him a colleague, at the Redbird Daily, Adam Butler. You can find him at LanceDance1 on Twitter. He asks the ideal progression for Terry Fuller and Zach Jackson. Now, Terry Fuller was the big-bodied 15th round draft pick who was hitting balls out of Marlins Park. And then Zach Jackson was a 6th round catching prospect who's probably going to be a first baseman who really, really struggled in the Gulf Coast League after being drafted. I love this question. What's the ideal progression for these two 18, 19-year-old kids? Well, they were both in the Gulf Coast League last year. ideally, you would want them both to start at Johnson City this coming season. Now, I believe Terry Fuller will. Zach Jackson, he's not ready for that yet. He needs to go back to the Gulf Coast League and find his way up. There is a third base prospect in the organization named Brady Whalen. And Brady was really, really good at Johnson City last year. Big power. He was a shortstop. He was terrible at third base after they moved him defensively, but he's a patient hitter with some power. And ideally, I want Zach Jackson and Terry Fuller to have the 2018 that Brady Whalen had in 2017 offensively. You're talking about, right around 200 bats. You're talking about 7 to 10 home runs, slashing 250, 340, 425, 450. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to see. And I want to see them in their 2019 season. I want to see them doing that. I want to see Terry doing it in Peoria, and I want to see Zach doing it in State College. And then that next season, I want Terry in Springfield. Don't want him to get anywhere near Palm Beach. And I want Zach Jackson in Peoria. And again, I guess I'm just going to stop saying levels and levels. I want Zach Jackson one level behind Terry Fuller. I also think it would benefit both of them to get out from the position that they're at right now. I would put Terry Fuller at first base. I would have him working nonstop at first base. I would have Zach Jackson at first base, working nonstop at first base. Zach Jackson is not going to stick as a catcher. It's heartbreaking. It really is, but that's not going to happen. So it'd be best for the organization to move on from that. Terry Fuller is not a center fielder. I'm fine with him being that. He might end up being a corner outfielder, but I want him at first base because that gives him a chance to just focus on his bat. And the organization has a meteor-size hole at first base. And I think that would really help the organization and both of those kids as they progress. So if we're doing it on a timeline, we enter 2018, ideally, repeating those numbers, 7 home runs for every 200 at-bats, 250, 340, 425 or whatever, 450, something like that. Because they're both athletic. They're both going to be able to slug the ball. They're both going to be able to hit a ton of doubles. You're talking about an ETA of 2022 for Terry Fuller and 2023 for Zach Jackson. And ideally, that's what I wanted. I want him to switch to first base. I can't say it enough. Adam, you're great. Also, another one of my former colleagues over at the Redbird Daily is Austin Lamb. Austin's a great dude, too. Austin asks what the realistic expectations for Delvin Perez are. Realistically, he stays at shortstop. He doesn't get suspended from the team. He doesn't have to sit a couple games. He doesn't throw temper tantrums. Unrealistically, you can't expect him to stop posting stuff on Twitter. I can't help myself. I've got to go there. I'm the worst. But from a performance standpoint, I don't care about home runs with him. I want him to stay at shortstop. He needs to get better at shortstop, and realistically, he can. By the end of 2018, I want to be able to say, oh yeah, Delvin's definitely a shortstop. And right now, we can't say that. He struggled greatly at short in 2017. The other thing is, I don't care about home runs. I just want extra base hits from him. He needs to utilize his speed. I want 280. I want to see patience at the plate. I want to see 280, 360, and the slug, right at 400. So if he has an OPS of above 770, 760, that's what I want to see statistically. But the most important thing is I want to see him stay on the field and, end the year at State College on a good note. If we're being ultra optimistic about it, I want to see him end the season at Peoria, regardless of where he starts. Again, kind of vague, but the most important thing with Delvin right now is just seeing that he can maintain his success defensively while also continuing to hit extra base hits. Got to stay at short. He needs to be able to stay at short. The next question is from our Seattle friend, Cardinal Rants. Cardinal Rants, I'm telling you, the next time I go to visit my brother during the season in Portland, I'm taking a little train. I'm going to meet you at Safeco, and we're going to drink some beers, and we're going to watch some Nelson Cruz. That's if Jerry DiPoto hasn't traded him yet. or traded him and then traded back for him, which is also another possibility. He asked a couple questions that actually kind of spiral into questions that other people ask. First question was Mercado. If I had to keep either Oscar Mercado or Magneuris Sierra, who am I keeping? Oscar Mercado. It's not a popular answer. I know the Cardinal fan base loves Magneuris Sierra. I like the power that Mercado shows. I like that Mercado has proven that he knows what to do with the speed that he has. That's something Sierra hasn't done. Mercado has made a lot of really great strides in center field, and Sierra's already the better center fielder, as I've said before. But I like the extra base hits and the power that Mercado brings. The other thing that's really interesting about Mercado too is in Arizona, he started taking walks. He was working on identifying pitches in the zone. He used Arizona as an opportunity to get better at one of his deficiencies, and I'm really excited about that. So I think right now Mercado has the higher ceiling and the higher upside, and he's more advanced. And if I had to choose one or the other, it would be Mercado. His next question was in regards to the future of Harrison Bader and Tyler ONeill. Are they bench bats? What could they possibly be? Now, another person named Wyatt Waddell from last week. Again, Wyatt, thank you so much for contributing. He asks ONeill, is he more Holiday or Grichuk? And he also points out in the tweet that he sent to me the question, some of the things that separate the two of Grichuk and ONeill that also make him really interesting. Let me put it this way. In my mind, Harrison Bader is the perfect fourth outfielder. If you need to give somebody some rest, then Harrison Bader is the guy who comes in. He can play a little center. He's not going to hurt you. He can play a little left. He's not going to hurt you. He's fun. He's exciting. The thing with Harrison is that I don't want him taking 400 bats in a season. That scares me a little bit. But I think if you're talking about a Skip Schumacher-esque role for him, where he's not he's not starting every day in center field, I think you're fine. What Skip could do with the bat and make contact and hit for average, that's not something Harrison Bader does, but he has way more power than Skip did. He is a perfect fourth outfielder. So, yeah, I could definitely see Bader on the bench as a fourth outfielder. I think that's perfect. I just would not want him to spend an entire season as a starter. Tyler ONeill. I believe that with one more half a season in the minors of development, that Tyler ONeill can be a perennial all-star. Not right away. His game is not the type of game that does extremely well or peaks right away. I'm thinking like he's 22 right now. By the end of the season, 2018, he'll be 23. I think by the time he's 30, he's going to have an all-star season or two, maybe three. He has a chance to be a superstar. Now, if he's more like Randall Grichuk or Matt Holliday, and I had to pick one of the two, he'll always be more like Randall Grichuk. He strikes out too much to be Matt Holliday, and I know Matt Holliday struck out a bunch. But he's athletic like Grichuk is. He's strong like Grichuk is, even though he's a bodybuilder and looks, Matt Holliday always looked country strong, right? He always looked like the kind of guy who could throw hay for 100 yards. Grichuk looks like the guy who's at the gym, maybe lifting, maybe scoping out women. Probably scoping out women because that guy's got it. He just got that thing figured out. I guarantee that. I just think he's somewhere in between when it's all said and done. The Mark Trumbo, that comparison is too perfect that it's almost not true. I can't say it enough. He's somewhere in between those two at his peak. And he's going to be frustrating when he gets called up at first. He's going to hit a lot of home runs. He's going to strike out a bunch. But he can develop into an all-star. And that's, he just needs the development time. He can't there's no way in a million years it does him any good to start the year with the major league team. Not unless he's made huge strides in the offseason, and that just doesn't happen. So is he more Holiday or Grichuk? He's more Grichuk. But I think with the right amount of development time, he'll be better than Grichuk was. Let's see. There were a couple questions that were tied together. I'm going to do Pat McCrory. Pat has been a loyal follower, a loyal listener. Who are the international prospects poised to break out. Now, the first two are kind of an easy way out for me. I'm going to go with Alvaro Seijas and Johan Oviedo. Now, they were both supposed to break out in 2017, and they both kind of stalled out. They're both right-handed pitchers. Seijas is 6'1", 6'2". Oviedo is 6'5", 6'6". And, they both have amazing stuff. And I think that, there's... Sorry, Cardinal Gifts just asked, am I too late for the questions? Yes, you are. Sorry, boss. You're way too late. They're the two easiest ones because they have dynamic stuff. It's just a matter of being consistent. That's what they lacked in 2017. Seijas at Johnson City, Oviedo at Johnson City, and then State College. They're the two easiest ones. Jonathan Machado is the easy answer there too. He's, man, I think there's a chance he's in Peoria. At the very worst, he's in Johnson City, and he's an extreme contact, extreme speed hitter that doesn't really do a whole lot else. Great range in center field, but not an arm to profile there. Those are the three obvious answers there. The other kid that I am just hammering hype-wise is Ivan Herrera. He's a catching prospect that I wrote about in the top 5 catchers in the organization. Everyone raves about him. Every scouting report I can find raves about him. And it's so rare to see that for a 17-year-old kid in the Dominican Summer League. He might be like the guy who sneaks his way into a top 100 list in the next couple of years, more so than Jonathan Machado, in my opinion. So the three obvious guys, Oviedo, Seijas, and Machado. But the one guy that you should really keep an eye on is Ivan Herrera. Now, keep in mind, too, with me as an evaluator, I purposefully do not dial in to the Dominican Summer League or to the international prospects. Not unless they're older, like Randy Arozarena or Oviedo or Seijas. They're just so far away. And I want to spend as much time following and understanding the skill sets of the guys in the top, 5 or 6 levels before I get too involved. Those guys will get there soon, so it's something cool to kind of keep an eye on. But by rule of thumb, I generally don't get ultra excited about a prospect until they're in Johnson City. And even then, it's with a grain of salt. So those are my answers. There'll be a couple other guys. You asked about Victor Garcia earlier. I could see Victor breaking out this year. I was really encouraged by how he ended the season. So keep him in that list too. You know what I didn't do this time, guys? I did not cross stuff out. And now we're in bad. It's bad right now. Do some of that. Vala, you're the best. GDUBB, you're the best. Poole, you're the best. Lance Dance, best. Austin, the best. Pat, McCrory, Waddell, Cards Rants. Okay, so that gets us to our next question. Hold on a second. Bourbon. Oh man, Rebbie Grill, Rebbie Grill, and again I apologize. Ask a great question. How many outfield prospects are too many? Yeah, I paused. I got nothing. So, the easy cop-out, canned, organizational answer is you can never have enough. You can never have enough prospects at one position. You can never have enough talent in the organization. With that being said, the Cardinals are in what to me is a nightmare situation. Because, in the major leagues, you have Dexter Fowler and Tommy Pham, and they're fantastic. I love both of those guys. And then you have Piscotty and Grichuk, which is kind of a disaster. You have to trade one of those two for, relief help. I would at least. And then in the minors, right now, for a starting outfield in Memphis, in between Memphis and Springfield, eliminate the Springfield thing. In Memphis, you have a ton of guys who are either too good for that level or will end up at Springfield but are good enough for that level if they don't trade people. So, you've got Bader, ONeill, Sierra, Mercado, Arozarena. I'm forgetting people because I'm a mess of a human being. Tyler O'Neill. Did I say that? I don't even know. I'm a mess of a human being. So the answer is you can never have enough talent at one position, but you can have a disaster of talent log-jammed in one level. Jose Dallas Garcia, too. Forgot about him. For me, ideally, I would trade Sierra. You guys know that. I say that a bunch. I'm not a huge Sierra fan. I would trade Bader, just because I think the guys behind him have higher upside, and I think he has trade value. And I would go into the Memphis year with ONeill, Jose Adolis Garcia, Jag, and Mercado as the outfielders there. And Randy Arozarena deserves to be there. Don't think he doesn't. But he'll probably start in Springfield, where he left off. And he could probably use some seasoning there too. It's just that under most circumstances, he's the kind of guy who would be at Memphis. So, you can never have too much talent, but it's not good to have a logjam of talent because that doesn't help anyone at all. And it also should illustrate that the Cardinals are at a position where they can trade from the Major League roster. They can trade Grichuk and they can trade Piscotty and be fine as long as they have something to put out there, and they do. Personally, I think Jose Adolis Garcia is close to being ready, more so than Tyler ONeill. But anyways, that's my answer to that question. Great question. God. Friggin' Cards asks, my favorite prospect storyline for 2018, Delvin Perez. Whatever the hell happens with Delvin Perez, we all need to stay keyed in on. It might not be my favorite story to follow, but it is the most important story to follow for the Cardinals in the minor league system as of this very moment on December 9th. Because anything could happen. Delvin could get traded. Anything could happen. That is the most important thing. I guess the other thing, if I had to choose, the third baseman in the organization, I want to see how that develops. Evan Mendoza, Brady Whalen, and Elweris Montero are all three really interesting guys. And the Cardinals lack depth at positions other than shortstop, catcher. Well, I guess the best way, they lack depth at second base, first base, and third is really intriguing, but they kind of lack depth there. So those three are high upside guys, and they really flashed great things in 2017. I'm going to keep an eye on how they do. And then I guess the third one, the third storyline I'm interested in is which of these outfield prospects gets switched to first base, because it's going to happen. It needs to happen. And then I guess one more thing as they keep coming to my head, I'm going to keep an eye on how those starting pitchers from the 2017 draft end up doing in 2018. How many of those guys who were just relievers turn into starters, and where they're at, because most of them are advanced age. So you're talking about 22 to 24 or 21 to 23 rather. And, Johnson City isn't going to do it for them. State colleges might even be a level down for most of them. So, you might be talking about Peoria being crowded, like super crowded with pitching prospects. So we're going to type ask away to Cardinals gifts and hope that he's got something for us. So there you go, friggin' cards. There's a lot to look forward to. Trust me, 2018 is going to be a really interesting year. Before we even get to 2018, the most interesting thing is what's going to happen with all of these prospects in the outfield. Before we even get to 2018, let's keep a close eye on that this offseason. Ryan Massey, who used to write a little bit for the Redbird Daily, he also asked about Delvin. He asked, is his stock falling, and assess his development. His stock has fallen. There's no getting around that. But I will also caution not to get too crazy about falling stock of a teenager. Kevin Maitan is the perfect example of that, right? When the Braves signed him as an international prospect, the people were comparing him to Miguel Cabrera. They were comparing him to Miguel Cabrera. People were going crazy for him. And he struggled a little bit out of the chute as a 17-year-old kid. And everyone's wondering, maybe he's not worth signing. Maybe you pull him off a top 100 list. This is why I do not get so invested into prospects at the lower levels. Never get too excited about a 16-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid, even if their skill set is off the charts. It's just stupid to do. It's fun to say that Ivan Herrera might be the next Johnny Bench, or I'm not going to say Yachty. It's fun to say that stuff, but it's pointless because you don't know. These kids are not playing equal talent under any circumstance. It's too hard to tell. So, yes, Delvin's development has taken a hit. His stock has taken a hit. And Cards GIF is asking a question. My computer is freezing. And, yeah. And where he is in his development, he's behind. You know, last year when he started at Johnson City, he was on track. And then when they had to send him to the Gulf Coast League to get his stuff together and work with Oquendo and, you know, get him in line, that's a step back. He ended at Johnson City. He did fine after being reassigned to Johnson City. But right now, his development is a kick below where it should have been had he had a successful 2017 season. He can make that up quick, though, as a 19-year-old. You know, like I said, if he ends a year at Peoria, you're talking about a top-of-the-line prospect who all of a sudden, you know, we're talking about being a top 5 prospect in the organization and a top 100 prospect in baseball again. He's not that. He was that. He's not that. That's a step back, but he can still be that, and it's not going to take a lot. Oh, and then Ryan also asked, because he lives in State College, Pennsylvania, will Jackson or Fuller start there? You know how it is. I just capped it a second ago. Ideally, you're talking about Fuller ending the year at State College or starting 2019 there. And Jackson still has a lot to work on. So let's cross our fingers, Ryan, and let's say Terry's there at the end of the year, and you'll be able to go in the end of August and get really excited about him hitting home runs out of that beautiful stadium. And then the next year, you'll be able to see that Zach Jackson do it at the end of 2019. That's really the end of the questions. I will say real fast before we move too far, Autograph 3114 asked, has Kisner's AFL made Kelly more expendable? He asked this question to me a little while ago before the Arizona Fall League. To me, it doesn't. To me, you hold on to all your catching prospects when you have an old catcher at the major league level who's dealing with concussion issues. You hold on to all of them unless you can get a premier talent. I would trade one of those two guys for Manny Machado, but no one below that level. You know, even Stanton, I would have been reluctant to trade one of those guys because of how much money you were going to take on. Keep asking questions. And then Barry Baker 8664 says, will we see Randy Rosario in Memphis during 2018? You will, unless he's traded, and then you might see him as a visitor. But, you know, truth be told, I would imagine by June there's enough shuffle going on at the major league level, at the Memphis level, that Randy's there. You know, I keep thinking with Randy that if there's an outfielder in the organization that isn't Jose Dallas Garcia or Tyler ONeill with the highest upside, it's Randy. And, man, he's so talented and so athletic. You know, I'm really anxious to see what his 2018 is. And he will be in Memphis, and he can hit to all fields. And that porch out there, and not the porch, but that little hole out there in left center field, where it breaks out past the center field fence. I could see him dropping quite a few balls in there and turning those into triples. So that's something exciting, super exciting, worth getting into. One last thing, and again, we're 38 minutes. I'm sorry for ranting on. I've had a lot of people ask me about what it would take to get Chris Archer. G-Dub, you know that you've been asking everyone. It'd take a lot. It would take at least the haul that the Nationals, I say the National because of the band The National. The Nationals gave up to get Adam Eaton. So you're talking 3 top 150 starting pitchers, 3 top 200 starting pitchers. Go ahead and speculate away. I would think that Michael Wacha would have to be a part of it. But feel free to go ahead and speculate away. If you add Alex Colome, you're talking about adding 2 more top-level starting pitchers. You know, Evan Longoria is interesting because if you take his contract, you might not have to give up as much. But, yeah, that's what you're looking at least. I would think the Cardinals would try to trade them an outfielder. You know, I personally don't think Kiermaier is even attainable. That's kind of one of those branching questions off of Chris Archer. So, yeah, you're talking about 3 starting pitchers at least for Archer alone. And then 2 for Colome. You know, a high-level prospect for Evan Longoria if you take all his contract. Probably another mid-level prospect for both Colome and Longoria. And Kiermaier, I don't see them trading. I just don't see it happening. So, and that's really it, family. Thank you so much for watching this little endeavor. We're at the 40-minute mark. Thanks for sticking by. We've talked about turning this into a podcast so you can just plug it in and listen to it. Hopefully soon we have that up. But keep asking questions. I'll do this as long as you have questions. And that's it. So for everybody here at Birds on the Black, everybody who's watching and listening and all that other fun stuff, let me get this bottle of Buffalo Trace open so we can get started on the next round. It's 6 tonight, guys. I made it to 6 without getting super sloshed. That's exciting. Happy Saturday to you. Again, for everybody at Birds on the Black, I'm Kyle Reis, and happy hunting.